Hi, I'm Scott. I'm 49 years old and I was diagnosed with Parkinson's roughly 12 years ago at the age of 37, although I first experienced motor symptoms at the age of 35. So today I want to talk about socialising and Parkinson's. When I was first diagnosed, one of my first reactions to Parkinson's was to go to sort of isolate myself and to actually move from where I was living to another place. And I really retreated from life, partly to kind of process the diagnosis, and also there was lots of other things that were going on in my life. So there's lots of grief. A lot of people left my life when I was diagnosed. A lot of family members and close friends just stopped calling me, and that was almost harder to deal with than the actual diagnosis itself. So it was a very tough time, and I went into my shell a bit. It took a long time, years really, for me to come out of my shell, and I became so isolated, and my mental health became so bad that I experienced panic attacks and agoraphobia. I didn't leave the house for about coming up to nearly 2 years. That was a long time ago, and since then I've regained a lot of my confidence, but I still get quite nervous about up and coming events. And this time next week I'll be in Birmingham. I'm going with my friend and fellow Parkie, Paul, to a Parkinson's UK conference called ParCon, where there'll be various talks regarding Parkinson's and events. And it's going to be held, I'm going on Thursday next week until Sunday, so a couple of days. I'm staying over in a hotel. And I'm very excited, but I'm also quite nervous because I don't do these things very often. Parkinson's restricts my life and my mobility, and I have various motor symptoms, but also non-motor symptoms that make socialising quite tricky sometimes. The main problem I have is that overstimulation. As some of you with the condition will already know, people with Parkinson's often find socialising tricky because there's a lot for the brain to process, a lot of multitasking. So for instance, if I go to a restaurant and there's music playing and the usual kind of chit-chat that happens in restaurants, maybe noises from the kitchen, voices around me, conversations on other tables, and of course the conversation I'm having with the people I'm having dinner with. All that sort of added together makes it quite hard sometimes to focus. So multitasking and overstimulation are often barriers between, are often present a bit of a barrier or a hurdle to socialising. There's also an element of, for me, there's an element of embarrassment and I guess shame really about appearing in public, either expressing the symptoms of Parkinson's or showing something like dyskinesia, which is actually, as some people already know, is a side effect to the medication, not a symptom of the disease itself. And dyskinetic movement is uncontrollable movement, often writhy or jerky, and it can be quite subtle or it can be quite large or noticeable. When I switch off, when my medication stops working or I'm waiting for it to kick in, my primary motor symptom is dystonia. So particularly the left side of my body will seize up, and certainly in the afternoons and evenings, I'll get a mental fog. So it's very, very difficult for me to process information, to think, in terms of communicating. My speech will become a little bit slurred or very quiet, or I'll stutter. I'll find it very hard to find words sometimes, so mid-sentence I'll forget what I'm saying and I'll have a bit of what I call a mental freeze. So as you can probably appreciate, all these things when you're socialising make socialising very, very difficult. And then on top of that, before I was even diagnosed with Parkinson's, I've always been a little bit socially awkward, a bit shy, and I find ways of hiding that. but that requires a lot of energy. And when you're experiencing fatigue, which is also one of my primary non-motor symptoms, when you have fatigue and mental fog on top of multitasking, it can create a sort of perfect storm, really, where I end up having what I call a Parkinson's meltdown. And it's due really to overstimulation. And when I have a Parkinson's meltdown, I metaphorically want to be in a dark room with no windows, on a very comfortable surface where I can lay down flat, preferably with an eye mask on, earplugs in, and total silence. So I can remove all sensory stimulation and just breathe and calm my central nervous system. But of course, when you're socialising somewhere like a restaurant or a bar or a cafe, you can't just turn the lights off, switch all the noise off and lay on the floor. You can, but it might look a bit strange. So I'm really excited about going to ParCon, and I hopefully will be able to make some content to share the experience with you. But I'm also a little bit nervous because 300 people are going, and there's going to be a lot of chatter and a lot of talking and a lot of information to process. And I anticipate that I'll probably have to go back to the hotel, which is thankfully very near the venue where it's being held. And often I rest in the afternoon, so hopefully I'll have the opportunity to do that. But yeah, I just wanted to talk very briefly about socialising and acknowledge that it's a difficult thing for us folks with Parkinson's. The appearing symptomatic in public, for me, is very linked to shame, really, which is something that I've experienced sort of separate to Parkinson's. When I'm out in public, I like to sort of go under the radar. I don't like to really be noticed. And of course, when you're experiencing dyskinesia or you're moving in an unusual way, it draws people's eyes and their attention. So that can be a little bit embarrassing. But I'm getting more used to that the more I move out of my comfort zone and go into social situations, which I think is really important for us folks with Parkinson's. If anyone has any comments on this subject, maybe you've had an experience where you've been out in public and you felt okay, pretty confident with it, or if you've had an incident where I know for me, because I have bladder problems with my Parkinson's, my bladder is quite, I need to go to the toilet quite frequently. I often find that I'm looking for the toilet. Everywhere I go, I feel a lot more comfortable if I know where a toilet is. So whatever your experience is of socialising, if you want to share that experience, feel free to comment in the comment section below. And you never know, it might be helpful for somebody else to read your experience. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope everyone's well and looking forward to a good weekend. And I'll see you in the next video.